talk now. This MMA, what we talking about? Yeah, you tuned into the pod now. Gonna be hard for you to stop now. Yeah, we caged in. Yeah, we caged in. Yeah, we caged in.
Welcome back to another episode of Caged In. I'm your host, Chris DiCarlo. Got a very special guest on the line with me today, UFC Women's Flyweight Miranda Maverick. How we doing today, Miranda?
Doing great. A Friday, so it's not super busy for me, but still going.
Perfect. Love to hear it. Thanks for taking some time out to come talk with me. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
All right, let's get into it. Before we start talking about fighting and whatnot, I'd like to get into your backstory a little bit. Kind of where were you born and raised, and what was growing up like for you?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in around Jefferson City, Missouri, so kind of central Missouri. Grew up there several years, grew up on a farm. We had hog barns when I was really little, grew up doing that. And then my dad started doing property development. So I actually moved around a lot when I was young. I lived in like 8 different states throughout my youth. And now we're settled back in Missouri of all places, which is kind of amusing. In more of like the southwestern corner is where my family's at. And I'm training out in Denver right now after being in Missouri to start as a pro, went to Virginia for grad school, and now I'm in Colorado. Probably here to stay until I retire.
Nice. There you go. Growing up, were you an athlete? Did you play any sports?
I did. I was always an athlete. I think it was just kind of from how I was raised. I always worked on a farm. I was always outdoors lifting things, doing things that made me way physically stronger than a lot of female counterparts. And so for me, going into sports was just an obvious choice. I did basketball, soccer. I did gymnastics when I was really young. As I got older, I did track and field. I did cross country. And then my junior year of high school, I decided to try out jiu-jitsu and did wrestling my senior year as well.
Nice. So how did that kind of blend into your introduction into MMA, and what kind of got you started in your journey to your MMA career?
Yeah, just obviously jiu-jitsu kind of fed right into it, right? I wanted to try jiu-jitsu to see if I could be the best at something instead of just good at it, because I was always a great athlete, but never the best in whatever I tried to do. Too short for basketball, track and cross country. I was too muscular. Like a lot of things didn't fit my build. And so when I did jiu-jitsu, it was just perfect for me. And after 2 weeks or so doing it, I just fell in love. It became my passion, like being able to control my body that way, being able to understand that I could defend myself at my weight, my height, and being a young female against these adult men who didn't train, you know. And so trying that, competing at it and winning in adult divisions and men's divisions and teen divisions was always really exciting. And then when I turned 18, I just decided I was going to give MMA a shot, basically. Had my first fight, loved it and won it. And so after that, the rest was just history of me seeing how far I could go in the sport.
There you go. That's pretty awesome. Let's talk about your gym a little bit. I know you're affiliated with Pound for Pound Muay Thai. Are there any other gyms that you call home?
Yes. So my head coach runs Easton Training Center here in Denver, Elliot Marshall. He is a UFC vet as well. And then my other coach is Justin Houghton. He's more of my striking coach, and he's the one who runs Pound for Pound Muay Thai. And those are the 2 coaches that I initially go to. I also have a couple others that I work with, like Peter over there at Centennial Easton, and he helps with some of the jiu-jitsu, MMA, grappling. I work with Archie Colgan, who's a Bellator fighter. And has also fought for Habib's Eagle FC for wrestling. I work with a lot of the guys over at Elevation, just getting different specifics done for my game.
That's awesome. I saw that you also do some pro wrestling training as well. I found that pretty cool. What kind of got you into that, and how's that going?
You know, you have Ronda Rousey, you have Valerie Lareta, who for very different reasons both got into the WWE, right? But I see it as a very easy side topic of MMA, basically, that you can transition into, already have the credibility going into that sport, already have the talent and the skills to go into it. It's just a matter of being able to make it fake, being able to make it showy. And by fake, I mean like not hurting the other person, right? Like, I've been amazed by how realistic a lot of it really is and how hard it is. Like, it takes a very good athlete to be able to do the pro wrestling at a high level, especially. And so for me, going in there and learning, don't grip too hard, don't do this too hard, but also make it look realistic, use your real moves in coordination, put it together and tell a story with it, has been challenging and hard on my body, just about like MMA grappling has. But I've liked it, and maybe I'll make the transition one day. I don't know. It's more like just able to see what other careers there are out there for me.
For sure. I was going to ask, is that something that you would plan on making a career path someday if the opportunity presents itself, or is that something just kind of dipping your toe in for now for fun?
toe-in for now, but I plan on starting to do some exhibition matches and things. And then if that becomes an opportunity that pays without me getting concussions on a weekly basis, that'd be great, right? But
Sure.
right now, UFC is where I'm going to stay. I'm going to still see how good I can be.
Were you a WWE fan growing up? Is that kind
Well,
of what kind of sparked your love for pro wrestling?
yeah, when I was little, that's almost all we watched until I got about 8 to 10 years old. And then the UFC kind of really came about. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And we kind of stopped watching WWE, AEW, like all those all together and started watching UFC instead. But I was back in the era of The Rock, of Kurt Angle, of, John Cena, like all the main people we know about are all the people I watch too. And now I've finally gotten back more for study purposes, but also just to enjoy it, of watching like Ronda Rousey and seeing how her transition has been, and others from the sport of MMA, just for my own purposes.
Right. It seems like it's becoming more of a popular transition from MMA to pro wrestling, and they're both kind of in the entertainment realm as well. So it seems like a natural transition, especially for somebody like you who is an athlete and athletic and has that combat sports experience. So it seems like a natural transition, and I'm glad you're having fun with it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so let's talk about your fight history a little bit. You are 11-4, 4-2 in the UFC, went 6-2 inside the Invicta FC cage. I was curious about the one-night tournament that took place at Invicta FC. 3 opponents in one night. How was the preparation for that and your experience with that one-night tournament overall?
Yeah, I mean, I liked the one-night tournament and I didn't like it. There's 2 sides to that sword. I always say I'm 13-4. I think the 3 fights in one night should count as 3 fights. The person I feel the worst for is Deanna Bennett. I beat her in the finals, and all she has on her record is 1 loss, when in reality, she beat 2 girls already that night. Yet
Right.
those 2 girls that lost, those 6 girls who lost, did not have losses on their record at all. There's nothing that shows on the record, which I think is ridiculous. That Deanna fought twice and won, and she has a loss, and they fought twice and lost, and they have nothing.
Yeah.
So that's my aspect of the record part of that. I think it's silly that not all 3 of them count for all 3 of us. They did for all the other tournaments they had, just not for ours for whatever reason. But it was fun. It was exhilarating, getting in there, fighting for 1 round, and just being like, you have 5 minutes to complete this fight or you lose, basically.
Right.
Like the pressure is unreal, right? Which luckily for me, I was always a fast finisher. I always went in and tried to end fights as fast as I could. Didn't end the first round match that I had against Victoria Leonardo, who was actually a rematch for me. Second round, I went in, had another rematch. So fought Shanna Young, of course, then for the first time. And now I just am fighting her again, my last fight. So it's very ironic. Every single fight I had that night in the 3-fight tournament, I have had rematches with, but I've never had a rematch with anyone else.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy that those 3 people ended up being rematched. I was going to say, you do have a few rematches on your record, and it just so happens to be those 3 girls from that one night. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. But the finals, I remember asking for 1 person only, and that was Deanna. All the other 7 girls, I was like, I don't care, just throw them in. But Deanna, I had already lost against, and I was like, no, I want to get that one back. And I don't want to get it back in the first or the second round. I want to get back in the final fight where it was 3 rounds, and they couldn't make excuses for it. And that's what happened, and I finished her. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I figured I had to ask you about that because I find one-night tournaments to be super interesting. So whenever I get someone on the podcast that has been a part of something like that, I always like to pick their brain about it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it put my name on the board, right? Like it was the that I felt like, wow, now I'm being recognized. It really kind of jumped me up the ladder. I think I should have fought for the flyweight title next, but instead I had to fight Pearl Gonzalez, which was more because she's an easier person to promote as a title holder at the time. She had the following, had the kind of OnlyFans following at that point, and I didn't have anything like that. And so they wanted her to have the title, obviously. Fought her, beat her, and then COVID came, and the rest,
the rest is history.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you in 2020, you got the call to join the UFC on a pretty massive card to make your debut on. What were the emotions like when you got that call to join the UFC?
Yeah, so actually it's a bigger story than what it sounds like. I actually got the call in June of 2020. Was down in Vegas getting ready to fight Mara Barea, and found out that I had 2 retinas that were torn. Both my retinas.
No.
Had surgery, emergency surgery, but didn't know that my retinas were torn until a day before I was supposed to make my UFC debut, and I was heartbroken because every surgeon was like, you'll never fight again. Like, no, we're not clearing you. And so went to several surgeons, finally found one that had done child retina surgeries and was going to clear me. Worked with her, got it done, and was back in the UFC in October, thank goodness. And yeah, it was a great card. First and only time I've been out of the US so far. Had that private beach and everything since it was still COVID lockdown, and fought, and obviously had a very good performance for my first performance in the UFC. And I think it's one of my favorite nights ever, just because it was a change of my life, right? It was a huge transition for me to basically make a living in MMA that year.
Definitely, definitely. Congratulations on, the UFC debut win. I know that was a long time ago, but it seems like you overcame a lot to get there. So that's pretty massive, and I'm glad that you were able to go and get that surgery. And, is everything okay now? Everything's fine? You're good to go for the foreseeable future?
For the foreseeable future. Still way more at risk than the average person, but I'm going to see how far I can get. And if it becomes, my family and I have spoke about it, and if my eyes become issues in the future, it's probably going to be something where I say it's done. It's not worth going blind.
Definitely. I feel that for sure. Currently, you don't have anything announced as far as fight news that I'm aware of. Is there anything kind of going on behind the scenes? Are you talking opponents? Are you talking shows?
There's been so many opponents thrown up that I've asked for, several turned downs, and just waiting by the phone for an answer.
Yeah. I hear you. Ideally, who would you like to get in there against, and what time frame? Do you have a specific time frame that you'd like to get in there next?
I'm ready to go right now. I've been staying lean, staying ready for any short notice. If they call me for like 8 days or more, I'm ready to go. Of course, I called out Malay McCann at first. That has been a clear no. That will not happen. They want to protect their girl and get to where she has at least a couple more wins before she gets destroyed again.
Right.
And JoJo took a different fight. I had asked for her as well. Macy doesn't want a rematch anytime soon, which I don't blame her, but any day she wants a rematch, I'm ready to go for that. Let's see, Misha, she said she was looking for opponents. I was like, I'm right here. She saw my message, didn't respond to that. So
no.
I assume that won't be happening anytime soon either. So I'm just waiting.
I hear you. It seems like you're having a tough time getting an opponent, but I'm sure something will turn up soon, and hopefully sooner rather than later, because I think I can speak for all of us when we say we can't wait to see you get back in the cage.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm waiting. I hope I get back in soon.
I hear you. In a perfect world, in 2023, how many fights would you like to get under your belt before the year's over?
As many as I can, 3 to 4, I'd be happy with. If I only get 2, I'm not going to be too happy, but that's been the trend of things. They've got such a big roster, it seems to be hard. And we can only make money if we're fighting, right? So exactly. I hope you get me at least 2 this year.
Definitely. Another thing I wanted to ask you about before I get you out of here, I know that you have a art business that you do run. I know you do a lot of art stuff. Not only are you a badass fighter, but you also throw down in the realm of art. Kind of what's the story behind your art, and how'd that start? And just, tell us the story about it.
Yeah, so when I was 11 years old, I actually started my own business. It was called Art of the Maverick, very original, right?
Of course.
And started drawing because I did a project for school. Never knew I was an artist. I just was kind of good coloring in lines, right?
Right.
Project when I was 11 years old that was like, okay, we're going to do a self-portrait off of this picture we took of you. And so we had to do it. We were supposed to go and like use a window and copy it and trace it, and then try our best to learn how to shade and make it not look like a stick figure. Right. And I wasn't going to trace. I wanted to just try all on my own, worked on it at home and everything instead of just during the art class. And I brought it up to my art teacher to turn it in, and she was like, whoa, yeah, that's good. That's really, and I had used just a mechanical pencil, literally.
Right.
I got to take it home and got like this award at a fair and stuff for it, showed my dad, and he was like, holy crap, like, what are you doing with your life? Like, go draw more. And so I started drawing more and more people, started selling them at school and like locally. And, it'd be like $10 for this drawing. Right. I look back and I laugh, and I'm like, wow, there's people that have my drawings I spent hours on for $10 when I was 11 and 12. And yeah, that's how it started. Then during college, I kind of put it down for a while just because I was doing so much. I still work full time and train full time, but back then I was also doing school on top of that and had another job, and so didn't have time. And I picked it up last year again and have done a few commission drawings, but also do it on my own time. And it just gives me a mental relief. I always tell people, find something to give yourself a stress relief. And mine is to just sit down in a quiet room, window open, sunlight coming in, and draw.
There you go. That's awesome. I know that you also do like custom, gloves, and your shin guards are always customized. Is that something that you've always done, or is that something that you've kind of picked up recently?
The last 2 or 3 years, I'd say since around the time I got in the UFC, I always wanted a nice pair of gloves. I had a company that I worked with that made good stuff, but I wanted my own designs. And with my art, I started making logos for people, for businesses and things. I was like, I might as well make my own logo and start putting those on gloves and really making some designs that I like and my training partners can use, and started that way. And then, of course, like people wanted autograph gloves, and I was like, I'll just make this a whole thing. So I have everything from my shirts to my boxing gloves to fanny packs, whatever there is, I basically have on my website.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the website so people can go find you if they're interested?
Yeah, fearthemaverick.net. Fear the Maverick.
Perfect.
Basically, if you type in Fear the Maverick, you'll find it, or Miranda Maverick, you should find it too.
Awesome. Couple more quick questions before we get you out of here. Are you? These are our last two are kind of random, not fight related and whatnot. But are you a fan of football? Are you an NFL fan? Are you going to be watching the Super Bowl next week?
No, so I am a non-sports fan all
Gotcha.
the way across the board.
Strictly combat sports.
Yeah, and even then, it's basically only the UFC, and I try my best to watch it when I can, but I'm just a busy person, and I never grew up with a family that sat down and watched sports much. As a celebrity athlete myself, I've never really even found it enticing then. I'm like, wow, it's pretty cool that people find me so inspiring and stuff, but I've never once got up and screamed and cried for somebody who won that I liked, unless it was a family member or a friend,
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, UFC, like BKFC, I'll watch sometimes. Wrestling, I'll watch. Boxing, just to kind of see techniques and learn for myself, but not really from an entertainment aspect.
Gotcha. And last one, UFC 284 goes down next weekend. Main event, Islam Makhachev versus Alex Volkanovski. Do you have a prediction for who takes home the lightweight title?
It's gonna be hard.
It is a close one.
For Volkanovski.
Me too. I agree with that. We're gonna see, man. It's gonna be a good fight, good night of fights. Miranda, thank you for taking the time out to come and talk to me. I appreciate it so much. Hopefully we'll get some fight news soon, and hopefully we can get you back on the podcast and break it down.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Down for the count and he can't even talk now. This MMA, what we talking about? Yeah, you tuned into the pod now. Gonna be hard for you to stop now. Yeah, we caged in. Yeah, we caged in. Yeah, we caged in.